What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of the Rocky movies? Is it the boxing? Is it Apollo's dance sequence? Is it one of the montages? Maybe the robot, Rocky winning the belt, or maybe it's when Rocky single-handedly ended the Cold War with a boxing match. I'm asking this because I think it's an essential question when trying to figure out what the legacy of the Rocky movies are. The moment that will always come to my mind first is this one right here.
Ain't gonna be no rematch. Ain't gonna be no rematch.
Don't want one.
Rocky goes the distance. You see, to me, the legacy of the Rocky movies will always be one of the most personal, relatable, powerful underdog stories ever told. Think of one better, you can't, cause it's just that good. Now, despite their best efforts, I feel like none of the Rocky sequels ever told a story quite as powerful as this first Rocky movie. That was until in 2015, Creed hit theaters. I believe Creed was able to tell such a powerful story, one that for me at least was on par with the original, because it uses the weight of the legacy that the Rocky movies has to tell its story. Creed is a legacy film done right. Hit the intro. When I say Creed is a legacy film done right, I feel like I should establish what a legacy film done wrong is. So I point you to Jurassic World, because there are so many moments in this film that feel like callbacks for the sake of callbacks. They have no purpose within the narrative other than to capitalize on people's nostalgia, because if you don't recognize these moments, they have no impact on you. The last Terminator movie, Terminator, that's not how you spell Genesis, guys, tried so hard to replicate nearly everything from T2. So many big films these days rely on nostalgia instead of telling their own stories. They are stuck in the past. Honestly, if you thought Creed was going to be another bad nostalgia cash grab, I wouldn't blame you. But that's why Creed is so goddamn incredible. Because it doesn't just remind you of the old Rocky movies just to remind you of them. It uses the world of Rocky to tell a new story. It builds upon the legacy it has. Why I think Creed works so well as a film, that to be fair does have nostalgic moments, is because you don't have to understand these nostalgic moments to appreciate the movie. All the little Easter eggs and character continuity only enhance the experience. If you recognize Adrian's restaurant, if you remember Rocky's speech at Apollo's funeral, if you know who that turtle is, if you noticed this, know who that is, remember all of these moments, that's great. But if you don't, that's fine. Because this film can serve as either your reintroduction or just your introduction into this franchise. You don't need to know everything that happened in the old Rocky movies. Although if you don't have any idea who Rocky is, then how are you a person? Like, honestly, I don't understand. But take a scene like this. Rocky grabbing a chair and sitting down in this graveyard and talking to his friends who aren't with him anymore. Adrian, the love of his life. Mickey, one of Rocky's best friends. For anyone who knows the history of these characters, this part right here has to hit you right in the heart. But if you don't, like I said before, that's fine. Because this scene does enough on its own to make you sympathize with Rocky. You can tell he's a man lost, a man with no real friends or family. That is until a young Adonis Creed shows up at his doorstep. And that's why Creed is so goddamn great. Because if you know these characters, if you grew up with the Rocky movies, this film will hit you so hard every time. But if you don't know these characters, if this is your first time in this world, like I said before, that is fine. Because for a film like Creed, one that feels so heavily steeped in nostalgia and the past, it at the same time feels fresh, it feels new. And in this era of nostalgia that we live in, I think so many movies could learn a hell of a lot from Creed. When the final bell rings, signaling the end of the fight between Adonis and Pretty Ricky Colin, the audience cannot help but feel victorious, even in defeat. But why? Our main character didn't win, he didn't get the belt, why are we still so happy? You see, Creed reflects the first Rocky movie. Winning doesn't matter. That is not what we really care about, and neither do the characters. The story of Adonis Creed is not about a man trying to win because he just simply wants to win. The story of Adonis Creed is about acceptance and proving yourself to yourself. From the very first scene in that movie, we have an understanding of what is important in this film.
He was my husband. Adonis, I would like it very much if you would come and stay with me. Do you think you'd want to do that? What was his name?
That name, Creed. Coogler very smartly gives us an understanding of just how important that name is, and we might not even know it at the time. Someone might have just seen that scene and think that was a clever way to incorporate the title, but whether consciously or not, the audience understands that that name is important. And then we continue the story and we see just how important that name is to Adonis, who I will call Donnie from now on. Donnie is lost to a certain extent. Despite having a loving mother and a career lined up for him, Donnie is not really fulfilled. He's missing something. He can't live his life because there's a certain weight on his shoulders that stems from his own personal insecurities. His father is one of, if not the, greatest boxers of all time. And what is Donnie? From his own perspective, Donnie was just some kid whose Apollo's wife took pity on. He doesn't feel like he earned his dad's name, and we see these emotions weigh on him throughout the film. He shadowboxes as Rocky fighting his own father. Donnie assaults a man for calling him Baby Creed after a very intense scene with Rocky. He doesn't tell people who he is because he wants to be his own person. He steps into the ring with a man who he has objectively no chance of beating in a very similar match to the one that killed his father. Because he needs to do this. He needs to prove himself. And eventually it isn't just proving himself to himself, it becomes nearly everyone. Because just as Donnie feared, when everyone knows his name, he can't escape it. And many say outright he doesn't deserve his own father's name. So yes, there's a huge weight on Donnie's shoulders. But that's just in the context of the story, because the weight of legacy extends past that and into the metatext of the story. Just as Donnie feels the weight of legacy, so too does the film itself. Or really Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan do. The Rocky franchise is beloved and cherished by so many, and is ingrained into pop culture. Any movie that was going to attempt to continue the story was going to have tremendous pressure on it. So yeah, they made the film about that, about legacy. They blur the line between fiction and reality. And there's a certain joy that comes from watching them not just hit the ball out of the park, but into the damn stratosphere. And yes, we have that moment of joy, of catharsis, of emotion, when we finally see Donnie prove himself. But before all that, we have the most heartbreaking moment in the entire movie.
I should have stopped this one with your father. I'm stopping this one now.
Don't, okay? Let me finish. I gotta prove it.
Prove what?
I'm not a mistake.
Wow, that's just so sad. It exists as this moment of complete and utter vulnerability, even if it's just for a second. And it's just so crushing. Rocky's face, right after, says it all. But then Rocky looks at him. He gives him a little speech and tells him that he's a Creed. And Donnie gets up and they hit us with that Rocky score, and he does it. He doesn't win, but he proves it to everyone, to himself, that he deserves his father's name because it's his name. He is a... Okay, so there really is a lot more I could talk about with this movie, whether it's the themes of family, or Rocky and Donnie's relationship, or Donnie and Bianca's relationship. But I'm also very I'm very lazy, so I'm gonna stop here. There is a new Rocky sequel, Creed sequel, Creed 2 on the horizon, and I'm very optimistic but very skeptical at the same time. I don't know, we'll see how it does. But that's pretty much all I have to say. So if you want to like and subscribe, that'd be kind of nice. But if you don't, whatever, you do you. But what I do need you to do though is I need you to embrace the chaos.